RFK Jr. and his boss are rebranding Christian right ideology with trendy ideas like wellness and spirituality. Now they've nominated a social media influencer to be Surgeon General. It's undermining women's health and it's dangerous. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Standing Room Only. I write a lot about the culture side of the MAGA movement. So when I found out that Donald Trump's new pick to be Surgeon General was also an aspiring poet, I had to learn more. Casey Means does not have a license to practice medicine. Instead, she's a wellness influencer. You know, one of those people that's always saying vaccines are bad or you shouldn't use sunscreen.
I want to be able to form a relationship with a local farmer, understand his integrity, look him in the eyes, pet his cow, and then understand if I can drink his milk.
But our guest today turned me on to Means' would-be poetry career. So I thought I'd dust off that English lit degree and do a dramatic reading of her masterpiece. If I were the devil, I'd ditch the disguise. No pitchfork, no flames, just marketing lies. I'd feed you poison, call it a snack, and label you elitist when you want your health back. I'd shame the sunlight and worship shade and block the rays the holy sun made, then sell you D in plastic packs to fill the hole from all you lack. Oh, the hole, huh? I don't think she knew what she was doing there. Just hole. Sorry, the word hole is funny. There's a verse about how porn is bad despite her love of filling holes. I'd give boys man boobs through toxic food and call masculine strength aggressive and lewd. I'd whisper, you're too much, too loud, and shame men's fire as something rude. It goes on and on like this, with her talking about how she's anti-materialist despite all of the money she makes from her newsletter and her books. But we can't top man boobs, so I'm gonna leave it at that. Donald Trump's companion, Laura Loomer, tried to warn the MAGA masses that Means writes about talking to trees and putting up shrines and other stuff that reads as frankly witchy or pagan, stuff that the Christian right usually doesn't like. But Christian conservatives are ignoring it, and it's because Means is aligned with the far right on the enemy they hate the most, feminists. Means has written that she shed her identity as a feminist and abandoned the idea of equality with a man in favor of the divine feminine. It's woo-woo, but ultimately no different than the message promoted by the Christian right, that a woman is not unequal to a man but was put here to be his helpmeet. And this sucks, but I'll admit it's smart politics for the Christian right. You see, they have a branding problem. Increasing numbers of Americans are abandoning Christianity. They see it as restrictive, judgmental, closed-minded. Instead, there's been rising interest in this vague notion of spirituality, one that's often promoted by wellness influencers who really connect it to material goals like fitness, romance, even making money. And let's face it, the Christian right was always more interested in social control than in something like Jesus. Increasingly, they seem comfortable reskinning their ideas and the aesthetics of woo-woo than traditional Christianity, as long as it means achieving their ultimate goal, which is crushing social progress. It helps that the Christian right is getting, well, stranger, even more witchy, more magical. There's been a rise of something called charismatic Christianity, which is very different than like traditional evangelical Christianity. It's way more into faith healing and prophecy and speaking in tongues, and it's a lot less into the traditional Bible reading and biblical literalism of evangelical Christianity. And the reason charismatic Christianity is on the rise is that a lot of charismatic preachers align themselves with Donald Trump, and so they're getting more popular. Trump's spiritual advisor in the White House is Paula White. She's a charismatic preacher, and she's very fond of speaking in tongues.
For angels are being released right now. Angels are being dispatched right now. Amanda aka ata raka teda baka sanda ata.
Okay, fine. But can we separate this from medicine? Apparently not with Robert F. Kennedy. Kennedy's slogan is MAHA. It's short for Make America Healthy Again. It's based on this false notion that Americans were healthier in the past before public health interventions like vaccines. It fits nicely with this Christian right notion that women were healthier and happier and families were better off before the pill or legal abortion. It's all lies. In 1950, people's lives were almost a decade shorter than they are now. Similarly, maternal and infant mortality have been on the decline for much of the 20th century, and it's in part because of abortion and contraception. But the fantasy of some natural past where people were a lot healthier has a lot of appeal in some corners. Kennedy uses his links with these wellness influencers who have a real hippie vibe to reinforce this false notion that he's a liberal Democrat. It helps him bamboozle people into thinking that far-right ideas like slashing Medicaid are actually more moderate. And just this week, he's severely restricted access to the COVID vaccine booster. Now he's using his appeal with people outside of the religious right to launder these Christian conservative ideas. Kennedy has a long history of using fake science to attack things he doesn't like vaccines. And now he's ordered the FDA to review the safety of the abortion pill based on a phony study that's been put out by anti-abortion activists. And the Christian right is only too happy to exploit it to push a deeply anti-feminist message. More on that during Pass the Mic. I'll talk to my guest about his attacks on birth control and the moms supporting him. I mean, he's not a charismatic Christian. But he is really tight with a bunch of these wellness influencers pushing a bunch of snake oil and kind of magic-y ideas. In fact, he's very close to Casey Means and her brother Callie Means. That's how she became the Surgeon General nominee.
We live in a world that's basically feminizing us, which for women, that's going to make puberty early. For men, it's going to feminize them. We also have an entire food system that's driving visceral fat to make us more estrogen sort of rich. And what is this doing? I think in a lot of ways, it's depleting American vigor.
Tradwives like to tie this naturalistic aesthetic to patriarchal gender roles. It really fits into this larger MAHA rebranding of the Christian right. Tradwives borrow a lot of the wellness tropes that Casey Means is promoting, like organic farming and natural foods and at-home cooking. A lot of it actually reads as progressive, even pagan, but it's all the same tired message of pushing women out of the workforce and into the kitchen. It's not that feminists don't like to cook. I love to cook. It's just that we don't want to only cook. It's scary to see the Trump administration use trendy ideas like wellness and spirituality to sell the same old right-wing attacks on women's rights. But I'm optimistic that people can see through these lies, but only if progressives speak out against it. My guest today on Pass the Mic is journalist Lindsay Beyerstein, and she and I are going to talk about exactly how to do that. I'm here today with my friend, journalist Lindsay Beyerstein. Lindsay, why are you an expert on MAHA and wellness influencers?
Well, I've been looking at the woo side of things for many years now. I've been active in the skeptics movement, and I've been publishing about all kinds of strange health schemes and the political and gender overtones that attend them. Because I think it's just this huge iceberg that gives us such a perspective on the values of our society, that people are working out so many issues that are important to them through their attitudes about their bodies, about their gender, about their food, about politics.
And gender is like such an important aspect, I think, of RFK and the way he's been selling his agenda. He had a couple months ago, maybe not even that long ago, he had this big event with what he called his MAHA moms. And this is a group of women that he's been working with for a long time. He's always surrounded himself with a bunch of wives, mothers of children that he uses to sell his anti-vax agenda. Why do you think he leans so hard into using women in this particular way?
I think he gets a kick out of having a de facto harem. I mean, he's all about being like the paterfamilias, the giant Kennedy clan, and whether they're related to him or not. He just likes traveling with this deep entourage of pretty marketable women who will agree with him about everything.
So it's just an ego thing for him.
I think it's an ego thing, and I think that there's currency involved in being a mom and being, a sexy, relatable, successful seeming mom. And it's a great bridge between the personal and the political, because they're very much delivering a political message about family, about gender, about politics that is, I think, that they convey very effectively for him, more so than he can sort of croak out himself.
From my point of view, it looks like gross and sexist, but it's very clear that his MAHA moms have a lot of appeal to women. I think even women who might think of themselves as feminists or liberated or modern in some way. When we talk about something like MAHA moms, why is motherhood kind of framed as like a form of expertise that has this kind of appeal?
Well, I think it's a narrative that is appealing to people who have become parents themselves, that it is a transformative thing, that you begin to see the world differently. And a lot of these pitches are sort of framed in the context of, well, you know, what has this person done in this transformative experience of motherhood? It suddenly makes you an expert on it, and people will try and capitalize on it and say it makes them an expert on, you know, whether you should get vaccinated, which clearly it doesn't.
And you are an expert in a lot of things. You're an expert in your child, and if you have a job outside the home, you're probably an expert in that sort of thing. But you're right, it's not an expert in medicine. MAHA moms, I think, really also like goes along with another big social media trend, which is this like trad wife thing. And they really lean into the organic foods, the naturalistic, almost hippie aesthetic. Why is that being used to sell this traditional gender? Like, what is the connection there?
They're very much about selling things that are considered traditional, considered old. In their value system, what's old and what's traditional is good. So you can dress that up in terms of claiming that things about certain eating patterns are traditional and old, whether they are or not. A lot of the times they're not, or that traditional gender relations, or, you know, certain gender relations are very traditional, like whether they historically are or aren't. That's what they're selling, is this idea of the natural and the old as the good.
In truth, some of these ideas sound really appealing. I personally really like gardening. I like cooking food from scratch. I think there is a lot of truth to the idea that eating whole foods and getting some exercise and getting outside of the house, some of these ideas are healthier. People do need to be doing these things. Processed food is bad for you. And yet we're seeing very basic concepts like eat your veggies, eat whole foods, get some exercise, being used to draw people into not only bad ideas like don't get vaccinated, but also, like you said, traditional, like retrograde, reactionary, right-wing ideas. Like, how is that process working? Like, what is the connection between natural and reactionary?
I like to think of it as a broad funnel. So there are all these issues that everybody's concerned about your weight, about your diet, about your health, about the well-being of your children. And there's a ton of lifestyle content out there. And what the right has done really effectively is make that mix between intrinsically not particularly political lifestyle content that anybody could be interested in. And then they start elaborating on those themes and drawing them deeper into a more ideological context. So not only is it nice for you to be cooking meals at home, which is great for everybody, but maybe you shouldn't have a job. Maybe the reason you're not cooking meals at home enough is because you're working outside the home and you should be there with your children.
I've noticed that a lot of the trad wife and like MAHA mom content really gets into this like using maternal guilt about food, because it is hard to work full time, take care of children, and then also cook entire meals from scratch. And so, yeah, they're like, get rid of the job part.
And you could just as easily say, well, that's why you need an equal partnership where your husband cooks 3 nights a week. As long as we're being aspirational.
Yeah, it's not like you can quit your job either. You need the money.
Exactly.
People ask me, why do women like the trad wife content? I'm constantly asked this. Now, I would say a lot of the trad wife content is being watched by men, not women. But it is true. Like, you see somebody like Hannah Nealman of Ballerina Farm, or like, I bet Casey Means' newsletter was mostly women subscribing to it. Like, why do women like this stuff? Because it's so sexist. Like,
I think it's because jobs are largely bullshit. I mean, it's the fantasy of being able to own your own time and do things that are fun and meaningful with it.
that's a really good point. Like, if you have this crap office job, like the fantasy of like now I'm milking a cow, especially the way they make it look. Like if you've never milked a cow, it looks nice. It's not nice.
Yeah, my grandmother grew up on a farm and she left and she just never had anything good to say about it ever again.
Yeah.
So this back to the land nonsense. I don't understand you young people.
No, it really is. I mean, I think, I garden and it's really fun, but if you've ever like been to a pig's like sty, it's not fun.
No.
Casey Means is an interesting figure. She's going to be if she gets confirmed, she'll be the Surgeon General. And she not only affirms a lot of RFK's anti-vax nonsense, she also is like against the birth control pill and has spoken out against it. What do you think is going to happen when this is actually brought into the public light? Because I don't think there's been a lot of people talking about this.
I think people are probably just going to accept it because she's basically mouthing a lot of the same platitudes that people are used to hearing from every, weird fertility app in the subway, that birth control pills are unhealthy and they're unnatural and they're, robbing you of your essential feminine energies and whatever, those sorts of messages. And I don't think it's going to scandalize people particularly, unfortunately.
That's scary because the birth control pill is like a really important public health intervention.
It very much is. And it's incredibly safe, certainly safer than pregnancy.
Kennedy himself has done a really good job over the years of marketing his like ideology and his views as a freedom of choice issue. And he even called himself a freedom of choice person when somebody asked him about the measles vaccine recently. And yet all he's been doing at HHS is taking choices away. He is restricting access to the COVID booster. As I said earlier in the show, he's asked the FDA to review the safety of the abortion pill, which is totally safe. It's really a very safe drug. And it's obviously with the goal of perhaps having the FDA take away its approval so that women can't get the abortion pill anymore. Like, how do people reconcile this freedom of choice rhetoric with the fact that he's just actually taking your choices away?
I think they don't. I think this has always been a charade, that the freedom of choice rhetoric was an inch deep for MAHA the whole time, that they're just as happy to have rigorous social control when it's enforcing their ideology as anybody else. Maybe more so. I mean, I was really dismayed to see that they're also banning oral ingestible fluoride, which is available by prescription. It's to kids that are at particularly high risk of tooth decay. They want to get rid of that too. And
they're doing that while they're taking fluoride out of water in some states. So it's like, okay, if you live in Utah or I guess Florida is on the like list of states that might be taking the fluoride out of the water, you might want to replace your kids' lost fluoride with this stuff. And now they're taking that away.
Yeah, they're taking that choice away from parents and their dentists to have these pills.
I would also say, I think part of like why the freedom of choice rhetoric does work for people, though, is that a lot of people's experience of medical care is they feel like doctors are very rigid, telling you have to do things this way, this way, this way. And so it's easy to portray the medical industry as anti-choice, like opposed to your choices. And therefore feel like someone like RFK is actually pro-freedom. I think that the idea of freedom and choice is really appealing. Like, how do progressives use this idea of freedom and choice to reorient people towards actual health care, actual preventative care, as opposed to whatever crap Kennedy and his allies are pushing?
It is a powerful message that your choice is being taken away about the COVID vaccines, that not only are they reducing the indications, but that means that what insurance companies will pay for will be cut back, because in general, insurers are reluctant to pay for anything that isn't indicated by the regulators. And again, with the fluoride, with the birth control pill, with the abortion pill, all those things are genuine free choices that we should have, and there's no reason not to. The evidence is on our side that all of these things are tested, they're safe, they're effective, they're enhancing our lives, and people have been freely choosing them and exercising that choice for generations.
Yeah, as I often say, like when you actually look at the statistics, most Americans choose real health care over whatever crap wellness influencers are
most
peddling.
Americans don't have 9 kids.
So To end this, I do want to ask a fun question. Like, what of all the MAHA beliefs do you kind of wish were true?
I wish it was true that there was one weird trick for limitless health. Like, in order to be a quack, you got to pick one thing and say it'll fix all your problems, whether it's masturbation, seed oils, inflammation, not chewing your food enough. You got to pick one thing. Casey Means picked something called bad energy, which is like a hybrid between diabetes and spiritual emptiness. And I wish that were true. It would be so nice if there was one weird trick that would get rid of the inevitability of decay and death, but there's not. There's just a whole bunch of little things we can do every day to feel better.
It's that one weird dude on the subway giving you bad vibes is the cause of your problems.
One weird dude is giving us all our problems, but he's not on the subway.
I wish that like it was true that sunscreen didn't work, because I hate putting it on every day. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but I know that it actually works.
And if you don't wear it, you can look like Casey Means.
Well, I mean, she doesn't look that bad. Like, what is she, like 52?
37, I think our research team said.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Thanks, Lindsay, for coming on to Standing Room Only. And please stick around for Encore, where I'll have the week's song recommendation for you.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, I'm coming to you from Latchkey. It's my partner's record store in Philadelphia. Yeah. We're fixing to go out. We're going to go see a band called Amel and the Sniffers. You should definitely check them out. Maybe we'll talk about them in some other episode. But right now, I want to talk about an artist called Planning to Rock. They're an electronica musician from England, though I think they now live in Estonia. And they've played with people like James Murphy from LCD Sound System, and they do a lot of work with the knife. And the song I want to talk about today is called Let's Talk About Gender Baby. And it is a remix of a knife song called Full Fire. They did a couple versions of this song. There's one that they did with the knife. That one was called Let's Talk About Gender and Sex, or something of that nature. And it's a play on a Salt and Pepper song called Let's Talk About Sex from the 90s. So that's really fun for me. And then they did this full remix called Let's Talk About Gender, which is my favorite version of the song because it's just like a dope beat. And Planning to Rock is a trans artist. They're also non-binary. And so they do a lot of work that is about sexuality and gender. They have songs denouncing the patriarchy, which makes me laugh. But they're like very playful. It's not trying to sound shrill. It's the very much the opposite. It's the idea, I think, is to kind of sneak it onto the dance floor. People are like jamming, they're having a good time, they're listening to this like funky dance music, and then these feminist and pro-LGBTQ messages kind of slide in sideways. So I really appreciate that aspect. They're called Planning to Rock, and the song is Let's Talk About Gender Baby. If you want more Standing Room Only episodes, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Standing Room Only started as a newsletter, and it's free to read. Click the link to subscribe. I love tips. These political battles are playing out in our local communities, your family, your school, your neighborhood. If you have a story, go ahead and drop me a line, leave it in comments, and don't forget to subscribe.